This is bizarre. There's a disconnect. There's a dissonance between the higher self, lower self. You're questioning yourself. The point is that all of a sudden there's two of you. So, excuse me. This idea is really kind of like, just like when you wake up and you're like, I'm tired, and it's like, I'm tired. The fact that you're narrating yourself,
right?
It's like, who's tired? Oh yeah, no, why did I just say that? I'm telling myself that shouldn't I know that I'm tired? Why is there this incongruency? What's happening here?
And that exists within everyone.
I think everyone's experienced something along those lines. They recognize that they have to negotiate with themselves. Well, but who the hell are they negotiating with?
Right, and as we discussed a little earlier on, as humans, we want to find the easy way out. Unless, in my opinion, unless there's a conscious effort to recognize the dangers of taking the easy way out.
Which I would argue that is your higher self. It's like the person you're aspiring to be, perhaps. It's the person, like you said, the higher reason. Okay, you're hungry right now, but then you remember, oh, that's right, I need to lose weight. I need to watch my calories. Let's just say, for example reasons. You're striving for something greater than the lower self's demanding of you. The lower self is saying, dude, just you're hungry, eat. And the higher self's like, dude, you can't confuse me. I'm better than this.
And I feel like tipping that scale between the lower and higher self is something that is progressively done over time. I feel like, to a certain degree, we're going to start out at a relatively neutral plane. And then over time, I guess, to a certain degree, based on life experiences, we're going to understand organically how we react to certain experiences, whether they're good reactions, good decisions that we're proud of, that make us grow, could theoretically shift us more to the higher self, or on the contrary, if we find that we make some decisions that get us to this point that does not bring us vitality, we're shifting to that part that's, like we talked about, some of those difficult truths and stuff like that, just being honest with yourself about things that might need to improve. So how does one who might be teetering towards more of the lower self, what sort of steps can someone take to get back to the better version of themselves?
So I think you mentioned it before, and everyone says this as a sign of addiction or you got a problem or whatever, but you gotta recognize, you gotta realize a moment. You gotta like, something's gotta smack you in the face. Someone's gotta tell you enough times. Maybe you end up in jail. Like, I don't know, but something has to happen. It's not a how-to. Inevitably, and I have this theory that anyone who lives, the reason I guess in a lot of cultures older people are praised, right? It's like, dude, have a lot of respect for people who are older. Well, the reason is because they realize shit. You can't live that long and be stupid. You just can't. You'd be in jail. You'd be dead.
Right.
Or you were just really smart, but so you ended up dead.
Ignorance, potentially.
Ignorance. You could be totally ignorant. But if you're ignorant, right, we're saying there is no higher self. Things are relatively simple. You're hungry, so you go get some food. You don't really think about it. Sometimes people got good genes and they just survive the train or whatever. My point is really, you need to go through life. You need to digest it. Something needs to wake you up. This story is I guess religiously or archetypically always something, which is interesting because we're going into this weird conversation, at least in my mind, about how do you realize? And part of it is curiosity or desire. Let's say you're hungry, but you realize you can't go get that food right now. That's enough.
I think something about this higher and lower self, like there's so many subdivisions of each of them, right? And so you talk about like who are you negotiating with earlier when you're making these decisions. You're negotiating between the two of these options, right? And so with the realization, there's a cost. The realization of like, oh, I can get this, but this is the cost. So you cost something out of your lower self to gain something in your higher self, perhaps. Mm-hmm. So you have a goal, maybe a lofty one, start a company or transform, your body that hasn't moved around for a few years into, the D1 basketball player you were in college 10 years ago, or some lofty goal. Okay.
Make it more simple than that.
Make it more
Like,
simple.
let's say
than
you
that.
didn't want any of that stuff.
Okay.
Like I was saying, like make it like, okay, I'm hungry and I want food. You don't have food.
Well, you talk about realizations. Realizations are a little bit beyond something maybe as primal as I want food or not. So that's why I kind of wanted to take it to, as I put it,
So,
lofty.
okay, one step higher than that might be what? Let's not make it so outside of everyone's reach. Because a lot of people I meet, they don't want anything.
Make it more simple. I want to be in shape. I want to get control of my health or something like that. Okay. So the realization is that, the person you are in some ways is going to die. And you're going to be born into the person that you're becoming.
Explain that.
Well, that's the negotiation that I was explaining between the lower self and the higher self. You realize that the actions, behaviors, the tendencies, they're all different when you become like this massive change that you've set out for, right? And so, as we've archetypically put in with the higher and lower, you trade out a lot of these lower self tendencies and behaviors in order to become the higher self that's keeping you in check and saying, wait, hold on. You don't need to eat after finishing 10 minutes ago. You don't need to scroll a little bit more if you want to make that next advancement in your career, your business, etc. You need to get off the app and get on task.
Going back to your goals, I mean, it seems like what Cooper mentioned, curiosity, right? Like desire, the fact that you wanted something. Is that enough to realize?
Well, I think we talked about the relationship between curiosity and courage, because I feel like courage is the one that actually creates the action. Once I'm curious, I have a decision to make.
Right.
Am I going to remain in the funnel of my lower self, or like Travis said, am I going to some degree kill that version of myself and access my higher self? But when we're talking about that, we have to be cognizant of the fact that the higher self is unknown. The higher self requires work. Work is hard. These are all sub-decisions of the overall decision.
Right.
So that's where the courage comes into play. Am I ready to step in the unknown? And
I like the way that Coop's explaining it, because that added to what he was saying earlier about how maybe we start at neutral early on. As a toddler just is. There he goes. Right. There she goes. Right. But as you learn and you have these realizations, a lot of them are also natural, but the separation is natural, right? So you become your higher self in certain ways, like as simple as I'm going to go use the bathroom now instead of wearing these pull-ups, diapers, et cetera, as you go through. I'm going to sit down and play the rules in class because it's better than being in trouble and whatever. The teacher gives me a piece of candy. And so you choose all these like higher self routes, lower self routes, right? And then the duality starts to form. But the point is, how do we gain control of that and make the higher self decisions
consistently?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so how can one go ahead and create some of those trends? So I've always thought a lot about it in terms of externalities, who you're with, what captures your attention, the information that you digest, all provides I guess external enforcement to get you to that next step, if it's good information that you're actually absorbing. I feel like a lot of it starts with that. What's taking your time? Where are you choosing to deliver your time and your attention? Especially in today, where you can lose 4 hours on Instagram instantaneously with mindless shit, even with good stuff that maybe doesn't even serve your purpose. So it's where we deliver our attention to. And for someone who might struggle with that, how can they take those steps to start delivering their attention to better self-serving avenues?
So you're bringing up a lot of good points, because there's a couple things in what you just said. The reality is that like Travis mentioned, you're always like when you look at something that's interesting to you on Instagram, let's say some guy's doing backflips. Your brain does, and you can look at the company Elon Musk, for example, Neurolink has created, right? It's like a chip that fires out patterns in your brain as if you did that pattern, even though you didn't. This same concept is what happens when we see somebody else do something. It's the monkey see, monkey do. You're becoming as a result of observing. You're being programmed. And so to tie into what you were saying, it's like, well, you kind of are tricked right now in that moment. When you see something on Instagram 4 hours and it's good, you actually think you're becoming. Your brain is processing that movement, that conversation, as if it's you. To take it into the next step, you said, you said, what's good for me? I've always focused personally on my weaknesses. There's more bang for your buck. That's just the end. That's the end.
It's more important what you don't know.
It's more important what you don't know, what you're bad at.
Right.
Where's your weak spot? That's more important. Because the things that you're strong at, you do naturally. That's why you're the best at being you in this moment. But it's only the you that's wrapped in the ego, right? It's the you that's good at this thing. The aspects that you're good at, it defends the aspects that you're good at. And it doesn't really walk into territory that it's weak at necessarily. So to your point, like, well, how do we get to the higher self? How do we recognize that? I think part of it has to do with recognizing those weaknesses. I think part of it is just looking at yourself honestly. How do you audit yourself honestly?
I've always done so through meditation. And I know that's probably a very dogmatic term, especially in the days we live in now, but I think it does start with conscious effort to understand what's going on in your head. Like you said, there's a difference between I am hungry and why exactly am I hungry? Why am I feeling this way? Why am I drinking a 12-pack of Miller Lite on a Tuesday night? Why am I buying an 8-ball of cocaine from my guy on a Friday evening? Why am I
Lord have mercy.
Why am I going to the gym? And I think that kind of brings us back to the part one of the discussion where the curiosity, the intent is almost detrimental towards getting someone where they at least are curious to get to. Whether they think that's the end destination, whether it's still part of the journey, all of that has to be part of the process.
You're bringing up a really good point. You keep saying, well, why I this, why that. It's curiosity of the self, right? You're talking, and I think we touched on this earlier. It's like we all here seem to share this quality where we want to see ourselves do this. But we're curious about what we're made of. Can we do it? I don't know. And when I do it, what's it feel like? But you want to see yourself, right? And to see yourself, you have to be honest. You don't want to lie to yourself. That is like advice that I would never give to anybody, right? Like if you lie to yourself, you will never be that thing that you desire. So it's in your best interest not to lie to yourself.